Oh, look, it's tough to game plan because, yeah, Mad Hatter's Tea Party, you could call it the Twilight Zone. I mean, it's the people. I do not think. I think someone said on Bloomberg this morning that nobody knows anything, and I think this is part of it. You don't know because the candidates are firing ideas of thermonuclear proportion. Things like we're not going to tax tips, we're not going to tax overtime, we're not going to have income tax at all. We're going to tax unrealized capital gains. We're going to tariff everybody under the sun, and you don't know what's going to happen in that situation. And these are things that are going to be difficult to get through Congress. They're going to be a tough execution, and they're going to be things that are possibly unintended consequences. So even when the election's over and either your candidate is won or is not, you're not going to know how either of these candidates are going to play in the future. So it's tough to plan. But having said that, if you're just talking about tariffs, Snap-on tends to make in the markets where we sell. It's part of our philosophy. We believe like being up close and personal to the customer allows you to customize the product to just what the customer in that environment needs. And it's worked for us for years and years, and it continues to work. It's one of the reasons why our stock was up in the quarter, because we had profitability, even though the sales were down. People say that, onshoring American manufacturing is going to lead to inflation. Well, the prices may be higher. But if you look at the EVs in China, you realize that the Chinese manufacturers are making hay in China and leading the world in EVs because they're adjusting to that specifically for what that great population wants. And you can do the same thing when you manufacture nearby. So onshoring, yeah, the prices may be a little higher for a while, but the American worker is a strong force. He drives productivity, the costs come down, and the products are better for the buyers that are right there in the market that you're making.
I also imagine, tariffs wouldn't have any effect on Snap-on because you make the tools that you sell in America in Kenosha, Wisconsin. We were just talking about it. You have a 150,000 square foot manufacturing center out there. And not only that, but you don't really have any competitors that don't make tools in America. It's not like a mechanic is going to ditch Snap-on and buy Chinese-made tools, right?
Well, actually, we do have competitors who don't make them in America. This is why Snap-on is number one. One of the reasons why it is because we do make up close and personal. And what we do, Matt, you know this very well because you're a guy who repairs stuff, is we make the tools that solve the particular problem. Some of them are relatively low volume tools, but we've learned how to manage that complexity. We make many more SKUs than any of our competitors, so we can address those very difficult problems, and people will pay for that because it gives them the mechanics. They get productivity, they solve the jobs faster, and they can make more money. One of the things about people, I say, the people who worry about onshoring, and they say, gee, if we onshore, we'll have to use American workers. Well, that is kind of a negative for American workers. I said on your show the last time, and I think this is still true, when you hear words like that, it is kind of general pessimistic view about the capability of American workers. We say American workers are not the question. The American worker is the answer. And if they can be properly enabled with skills, they are motivated and committed and capable and can beat anybody who imports. Either maybe the cost isn't as low, but the utility of the product will be better.
Nick, the uncertainty is palatable, and I can certainly understand that there's a lot that we don't know. But when you hear these election promises, what keeps you up at night? What are you most concerned about at the end of the day that could see the light of day after this election?
Well, Shanali, here's the thing. People ask people, have they let me talk in terms of the people of work. We call on 1 million technicians every week. And we have in America about 3,500 franchisees who do this, and we call on 300 garages. And what they say is, when you ask them about the outcome of the election, what are you worried about? It has to do with how people feel about the reaction. People say Americans have lost faith in democracy. Actually, in a way, Americans have lost some hope, because what they and I are most worried about is someone will get elected, it looks like, going to be in a very slim majority, declare a mandate, and then proceed to nurture their base proposing policies which 49.5% of the people didn't want, were sort of against. And the idea is, despite what people say about, I'm going to be the president for all the Americans, it's sort of like the Harry Chapin view where his lost love leaves his taxi. She's wealthy and successful, and she leaves and she says, we must get together. But he says, I know it'll never be arranged. And when people hear candidates say these days, I'm going to be the candidate for all America, they believe that they won't be. They won't bother to try to compromise and enlist everybody and be and represent all of America. And therefore, they have no hope in getting what they want in working together with those people. The National Association of Manufacturers just sent out a letter to the next president saying, we want to work with you because we think manufacturing provides for the general welfare and we want to work with you to make it better.
Right.
But in a way, sometimes who's ever elected by a slim majority doesn't pay attention to that.
Nick,
they view themselves as the agents of those who put them in place, the base.
Nick, I didn't get your reference, but I get your point. And
Harry Chapin is a songwriter. He wrote Cats in the Cradle.
Right.
This is the Taxi song.
Taxi.
I'll
sing it for you sometime.
I'll do my own research after the show, but in the minutes we have left with you, I do want to get a little bit away from politics because I was just taking a look, of course, at some of your performance this year. You referenced that third quarter strong earnings showing, and of course, your shares were up 14% in October alone, so a big rally there. You take a look at some of the research. Bloomberg Intelligence suggests that some of your growth is coming basically from aging vehicles, that you have people doing DIY repairs on their own vehicles that are getting older rather than, of course, buying new vehicles. I'm curious how you're seeing the different dynamics there.
We don't sell to DIY people. If there's any commandment in Snap-on is thou shalt not sell to DIY if you can help it. But generally what's happening is there's a lot of things. The vehicles are getting more complex. As they get more electronic, the work gets more complex. They need different tools. That's number one. Number two is the vehicles are aging. And as they get more electronic, mechanics need more decoding. And we have databases with our diagnostics that are up to 415 billion data points. And we have artificial intelligence and natural language processing and machine learning that decodes that and allows the people who are maintaining the cars to do them much faster. So that's what's selling for us. What happened in this time, I think why our stock went up is the mechanics in the garages are uncertain. They're cash rich, they're confidence poor. They don't want to buy things like the boxes behind me, which they have to pay off in 4 or 5 years. They want to pay short payback items. It puts a hole in our product line. It reduced our sales, but we pivoted to sell them the smaller things, the quicker payback items, which are very profitable. And so our sales were somewhat attenuated, not bad, 1.1%. But our profitability was up 80 basis points, the highest third quarter we ever had, on gross margins that were up 130 basis points. And we were more profitable even though we kept spending on our product, on our brand, and our people in the future. Because when the uncertainty goes away, we want to be at full strength. That's why the stock went up.
Nick, what's your view on inflation right now? You sell to 1 million mechanics around the country and many more, I'm sure, around the world. In terms of car prices, we can't afford new ones. Insurance is too expensive. I filled up at a gas pump today for $5 a gallon. How are you keeping Snap-on tool prices, which are fairly high, at a level that people can afford them?
We generally, certainly during the big pandemic difficulties where supply chain was bad and we were buying that spot, we were buying higher prices and we raised our prices. But generally, we don't really price too much, actually. None of our growth really comes from pricing. It comes from new product that provides more value. And then we have a culture of rapid continuous improvement where everyone on Snap-on knows their job is to get up every day and to figure out how to make their job easier. We have an idea around this where we have a badge that represents this. The people are in the middle. And then every day or periodically, they look at what they do in the factories and the design labs and try to figure out how to make it better. Then we bring in technology. For example, at Milwaukee, we have 5 times as many robots as we did just a dozen years ago. And then we train the people in the technology and celebrate it and start again. But the big point about that, our most important resource is the people. So we put technology into the market, into our operations to amplify the energy of our people. And that seems to work for us. So we keep driving our costs down and therefore able to give more value to our people, even in inflationary times, to our customers, even in inflationary times.